Movie titled Max Steel 2016. It is a story about a team named Max McGrath, who discovers that his body has the ability to generate the most powerful energy in the cosmos. Steel is a witty, slightly rebellious extraterrestrial who wants to take use of Max's abilities. When the two meet, they fuse to form Max Steel. How powerful is it? And how can Max Steel fight off the unstoppable enemy from another galaxy? Before we start, be aware, there are spoilers. In the opening scene of the movie, we witness a teenager, Max McGrath, sitting on his roof, sketching a picture of a winding river. His mother, Molly, calls him down to help her continue unpacking. They are, she suggests, home and ready to make a fresh start. Fresh start number 9, Max jokes. As he empties a box, he gazes forlornly at a picture with his father that was inside and up at some stars on his ceiling. There is a brief surge of electricity that interrupts the TV signal, which his mother notices before heading off to bed. Max then realizes it appears to have come out of his hands. The next morning, on his way to school, Max stops off at the gates of an abandoned Intech building where his late father Jim had worked and gazes in. At this point, he receives a phone call, but as he attempts to swipe to accept it, the electricity from his hands interferes with the device. Next, he heads off on his bicycle, but is lucky to avoid a collision with the pickup truck driven by Sophia. As he lies on the ground somewhat shocked, she leans over him and asks him to meet her later. After school, Sophia gives Max a lift back to her place, where she helps him fix his bicycle. Max then arrives home to be greeted by Miles, a former colleague of his father who is joining the family for dinner. During their conversation, we learn that it is Miles who persuaded Molly to move her family back to Copper Canyon. We also learn that Miles was there the night Max's father died and supposedly tried to save him. Meanwhile, over at Intech, something strange is happening. It begins with a glow, lighting up what appears to be a pool of water. Two scientists approach this to investigate. The watery substance bursts into the air, forming a crystallized web that resembles ice. The scientists call security, claiming there has been a breach in the containment chamber. They track a flying object on a computer, while instructing a heavy-armed team not to let it out. Then, suddenly, steel flies between them and bursts out of the building. Later that night, before going to bed, Max begins to research the events that killed his father. There is a lot of speculation online as to whether or not this was caused by a tornado. As he gets irritated with the glitch in his computer, he notices the electricity surging from his hands once again. However, this time, by commanding it and closing his hand, he is able to turn it on and off at will. The next day, out in the woods, Max experiments further with his new powers, accidentally setting fire to a lampshade as he does so. "This is freaking awesome," he declares. The next day in school, we see Sophia frantically banging on the window, trying to attract Max's attention. However, he is unable to hear her. A girl nearer to the window interjects. Sophia wants to meet Max at the Thai place on Main Street. As Max heads off, his electrical powers seem to interfere with the nearby vending machine. This causes it to spill its contents across the floor. A number of other students scramble to grab the cans it has emitted, free of charge. Back at home, Max asks his mom about his father. He claims everyone in the town knows more than he does. He has no idea what happened to him or how he died. His mother explains that she wants to tell him more, but the story is just so complicated. As Max falls silent, now deep in thought, we sense that something is tracking him outside of his home. Over at the Thai joint, Sophia introduces Max to boba tea, much to his surprise and disdain. During their conversation, we sense a growing rapport developing between the two of them. When she asks for Max's number, her phone appears unresponsive, but he is suddenly overwhelmed by a rush of electricity. He heads to the bathroom to try and recover, but instead enters a state of panic. He flees from the restaurant on his bicycle, heading into a nearby forest where he continues on foot. Here, he begins to scream and lose control, with beams of electricity bursting out of him and into the sky. The next morning, Max awakens to find burn marks in his sheets and wounds across his chest. His state of confusion isn't helped by the arrival of a flying silicon-based life form who introduces himself as Steel. Steel tells Max about his energy. He also claims that he is there to protect them for whatsoever is trying to kill them. As Molly hears the disturbance and tries to investigate the source of the noise, Max hides Steel in his laundry basket. Steel then tells Max he can help him by absorbing his excessive tachyonic energy. As the two of them discuss the situation further in the woods, they notice the presence of a black SUV. A number of men exit this and move towards them, armed with sizable automatic weapons. Max tells Steel that if they find him as an alien being, they will dissect him. The two of them therefore make a break for it together. They make it to Max's school where he keeps Steel hidden in his bag. His alien friend, however, refuses to keep silent, causing a lot of confusion for his fellow students as he chatters away. Later, in an abandoned building, Steele begins to introduce Max to the extent of his powers. As Max experiments with how to use his speed and strength more effectively, Steele tries to tell him about his gift for battle strategy. But his teenage companion is distracted. He is learning to control an array of gifts, which include an ability to jump up several floors. It is then that Steele introduces Max to what he considers to be the best part, when the two of them combine together to clad Max in a superhero-like suit of armor. It is, when wearing this, that Max is exposed to a flashback of his father. Max decides he should go and speak to Miles about this. On the way, he again nearly collides with Sophia. As they are talking, he spots the black SUV in the distance and, once again, makes a run for it. In a nearby alley, he decides he and Steele should split up, and commands his alien friend to buy him some time. Sophia then blocks his path out of the alley and confronts Max. At this point, he makes a spontaneous decision to head to Intech with Sophia in her truck. The two of them bond further on the drive, with Max attributing his difficulties to the premature death of his father. Sophia, it seems, is convinced Max just likes to be alone. At their destination, they are greeted by Miles. Max begs his father's former colleague to tell him more about what happened, but the older man is reluctant to reveal anything more. Suddenly, sensing another surge of energy is coming, Max runs off and away, leaving a baffled Sophia back in the Intech facility. Darkness quickly descends and a tornado appears to be striking. Max attempts to take cover near a railway track. He is alerted to a woman in plight by her screams and helps her restart her car by using the electricity from his hands. He then takes shelter in a garage, but the building is blown away, leaving him exposed once again. It is here that Max first comes face to face with Red-Eye Ultralink, an alien race who were able to control the elements and had launched the attack that killed his dad. Fortunately, Steele arrives to assist in time. He tells Max how he can fight back. In doing so, Max uses his turbocharge to take down his attacker. Once grounded, Max realizes that the Ultralink resembles Steele, and he tells Steele that he must be one of them. Steele defends himself, claiming he had fought them alongside Max's father, but Max refuses to accept this. He heads off alone. Max turns to Sophia for help. He asks for her phone, her truck, and some rubber gloves to insulate his hands. He drives away while speaking to Miles on her phone. He expresses his fear of the men with guns and concern as to whereabouts of his mother, who has gone missing. Miles tells him they have probably taken her to his dad's old lab. Now, inside of the lab, Max discovers Steele has been shut down once again. Meanwhile, we witness a flashback to the night of his father's death. As the lab was facing the attack from the Ultralinks, Jim was strapped into a harness designed to channel his energy into the fight. However, Miles, having sided with the Ultralinks, used this to drain and seize his energy, killing Jim as he did so. He is now planning to do the same with Max. An armor-clad Miles confronts Max in the room containing the harness. The two begin to fight, but Max is no match for Miles in his red suit, working in sync with an Ultralink. He tells Max he needs him alive in order to access his energy. Surprisingly, Max then steps into a harness voluntarily. From here, however, he is able to combine with Steele once again. Now clad in their gleaming, metallic white outfit, the two confront Miles. Though initially outfought, even with the support of the gunmen who we now find are working for Molly to protect Max, Steele and Max regroup. Once pinned to a wall by Miles, Max begins to channel all of his energy into his assailant. This overwhelms Miles and causes him to explode. The battle is won. Later, Max and Steele regain consciousness, clearly highly fatigued from the fight. They are greeted by Molly, who we learn has long known Steele and is delighted to find him alive. It is also confirmed that Max's father was actually an alien. At long last, Molly finally begins to tell her son what she had long known. That the Ultralinks were trying to hunt him down and she had continually changed their location in order to evade them. Max is then able to learn from whence he came. He does this by lighting up an array of stars his father had left for him on the ceiling, to form a three-dimensional map of space. Keen to make it up with Sophia, Max heads over to apologize for his odd behavior. He tells her that she was right, that he has got used to being alone. He thanks her for noticing him and gives her one of his hand-drawn pictures. It depicts the moment they met as she loomed over him. Yes, in his first glimpse of her, she appeared to be upside down. Touched by the gesture, she kisses him with passion. Naturally, they make a date for later that evening. In the final scene, we see Max and Steele agree to engage in fly mode. As the sun sets over the river, the two of them soar above it. Here are the friends about which way they should go. Finally, they zoom away at a fast pace. Like and subscribe to watch more.